They're selling you all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
I back. Trust me, I back.
But I'm not impressed by your performance.
You'll do nothing. You'll do nothing. Shut your fucking mouth, you'll do nothing. You'll do fucking nothing. Not one of you'll do nothing.
I'll tell you what, bro. I was out there, I was fighting all the hitters, bro. You ain't fought no hitters.
Come on, guys. It's normal.
I'm not saying I would fight you. I would kill you.
John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John? I mean, really?
No, don't be scared, homie.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the fuck he wants.
I'm gonna beat you into the living death. I mean, maybe that's your job, but where I come from, people like that get slapped.
That's fucking illegal.
Machida, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Yeah, this is a simulated death match. And you haven't simulated anybody's death yet.
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
What is the game plan going in against him?
The game plan is you go in there, hit him with some good shit, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
Do you want to be a fighter? That is my question.
Any of you radio personalities think you want smoke? Call me Mr. Chimney. I want smoke.
Yes. What is up? MCR family. Another daily edition of the show where we discuss all things boxing, MMA, and everything in between. I know we did not have a show yesterday. I do apologize. Gunshots at me. I'm sorry. Nigel is in the tower. I'm at the sniper shot, But we're here today. We are late, I know. We're live every day, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, and obviously 10 p.m. in the UK. Obviously 2 hours late today. Just had some family stuff I had to deal with in the past 48 hours, 24 hours, whatever it is. Just been a little bit hectic over here. But it is Triple G versus Canelo, or I should say Canelo versus Triple G 2 preview day. Yes, get hyped. Because even though I would say the greater sporting culture and community is not that hyped on this fight, I think most of us are. And even though there's a vocal minority, I would say that is critical of this matchup, being over. And obviously the clenbuterol issue for Canelo is a factor in that, I would say. But that's not what this show's about. No, this show's about previewing and breaking down the fight on Saturday, the action it is, who's going to win, the technical breakdown of it. Definitely call in 323-870-4051. Press 1 to get in the queue to give your thoughts. If you are international, email me, mixedcombatradio@gmail.com, to get that international call-in link. Email me there, and I will email you directly that link, which is permanent and absolutely free. Quickly shout out to everyone in the chat. Aaron Munoz, Bayside Boxing, Plastic God, Frangoli, Ellie, and everyone else that's listening. I hope everyone's having a great day. Everyone have a great day tomorrow as well. I hope everyone's having a great week, because it is, like I said, Canelo vs. Triple G 2 fight weekend. Like, it is Mexican Independence Day weekend for a long time in the sport has been right behind Cinco de Mayo for the biggest weekend of the year. Not only do we have a great fight on Saturday for, obviously, the boxing fight, we have a good UFC card that's going to be on earlier that day. And also Friday and Thursday cards on ESPN. And most of us have ESPN. Those are some good fights there. Jose Ramirez versus Antonio Orozco. Going to obviously touch on that card as well. But like I said, it is Canelo vs. Triple G fight week. Like, this is dominating the combat sports world right now in this week. And I'll be honest, I'm not really going to talk about the back and forth beef between them, the lack of real media obligations that they're doing, the lack of face-offs. Like, that's all atrocious in my opinion. Like, that's all taken away from this fight. The fact that we don't have a single face-off between these two, since, obviously the Cinco de Mayo, clenbuterol, debacle, we haven't had that. They had a press conference the other day, but they didn't have a face-off. Canelo has refused to have one going forward. It is what it is, unfortunately. I think that does take away from it. Even if it's like the iconic one where you have all the cops lined up in between you, a la Tyson. Like, do something. This is prize fighting. There is inherent promotion that needs to be done, and there is a complete lack of promotion in this fight. That's why I think it sort of seems tepid in terms of hype and towards the build-up. But again, that's not what I really want to talk about, because that takes away from this matchup. I think it really does. And it's the same with the clenbuterol debacle, same with all of this stuff. It takes away from basically a fantastic matchup, not only on paper, but what we've seen. I think the fight last year was a fight of the year contender. It may not have a knockdown, may not have had the dramatic moments some other fights had last year, but definitely in terms of action, from opening bell to the end of the fight, it was all there. Everything you could want in a fight was there, basically. And plus, it's at the highest level of this sport when you have these two guys fighting. So I'm hyped for it on that alone. And I'll be honest, the whole clenbuterol debacle, them beefing, them not wanting to be with each other in the media, me personally, I know this doesn't do it for the whole majority of boxing fans and just sporting fans as a whole. That's why I don't think it's a smart idea. It gets me hyped. It's kind of like it's a hip-hop analogy. Not everyone's going to understand it. But when Kendrick Lamar dissed Big Sean said no more interviews and stopped being in the media for a very long time. That got me hyped for a potential beef between them that never happened, obviously. But this is different of it, for they're fighting this weekend. We are getting a date between these two. And it's going to be interesting to see, obviously, what happens. Now, let's break it down because even though there's some good matchups on the card, like David Lemieux versus Gary Spike O'Sullivan, obviously Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez versus Moises Fuentes on the card, Jaime Munguia versus anyone is an interesting fight at this point with the meteoric rise that is Munguia versus Brandon Cook. I don't care about those matchups. The prospect saying absence of hype is hype for Matt. No, it's not that prospect. Let me be very clear. This seems very real to me. Like, the animosity between Triple G and Canelo seems 100% real. And them not doing basically almost any media because of it is indicative of the real animosity and them being serious about that. So that gets me hyped. However, I know for the casual fans, they want that intense stare down. They want that face off. They want them to get they want an altercation. They want that sort of real, actual physical beef being presented to them before the fight, and that's not happening. Obviously, what is it called? The Face Off on HBO, whatever that show is called with Max Ellerman. That wasn't done for this fight. This is all things that hurt the fight, obviously. But I know, just knowing these two guys, being around, at least Triple G, quite a bit, actually, being in, after parties with him, he was an interesting guy. This is real. Like, he really does not like Canelo, and vice versa. Canelo does not like Triple G. Canelo views Triple G as trying to sort of smear his legacy, and of course, Canelo's going to take that personally, and vice versa. Triple G views Canelo as a cheating guy that got away with a draw that he won. Therefore, he feels like it's personal. Bayside Box saying Khan versus Brooks seems like fake hype. I know what Matt is saying. Like, that one is not necessarily fake hype, but that one seems like it's just so drawn out. Like, that's the difference. Like, I'll put it this way. If Jamel Charlo and Jared Hurd all of a sudden started really, like, beefing, I would view that as fake beef. Because they're actually, like, pretty cool with each other. They took a picture with each other. Like, they're tight with each other, So when they... I don't view it that same way. Like, that doesn't get me going in that sense. Big Al saying, how about the fact that neither of them speak English? Casual fans in the U.S. don't get hyped off of translators' interpretation. I feel that's part of the issue, but I don't feel like it's that much of a factor here. Like, obviously, it's a factor in the lack of hype for this fight, but I don't feel like it's the majority of the contributing factors to the situation here. I just don't think that. The first fight, I remember listening to hip-hop podcasts, pop culture podcasts, news podcasts, and they would mention this stuff, the first fight briefly. Like, oh, you're going to watch the Canelo Triple G fight coming up this Saturday? Like, very casually, very briefly, similar to 2 weeks ago with that one, it was Mayweather McGregor, right? So I heard every sort of podcast, whether or not they talked about sports, outside of sports, they talked about Canelo Triple G in the first fight. This time around, I do not hear that. I do not think it's because they don't speak English. That was always a factor. So something new, I think, is obviously presented. What has been new in the last 12 months as to cause those mainstream, not really mainstream, but non-boxing media entities that discuss Canelo versus Triple G to no longer discuss it. A, I think obviously the clenbuterol issue is a major factor. B, I think it is the lack of media. I think those two are really the main culprits as to why this fight feels underwhelming at this point coming into it. But again, I think that takes away from how good this fight is. And I feel like I need to keep reiterating how good of a fight this is, how entertaining it's going to be. I think we're really going to get a similar fight from the first one. I don't feel like we're going to see that many adjustments and differences between the two. Obviously, I'm going to get into that. But if it's even close to that first fight, it's entertaining. It's a fun fight, and I'm hyped for it. But let's get into the actual matchup itself. I've spent 11 minutes now talking about this fight in a ethereal sense. Let's actually talk about it from a very physical sense, what's going to happen in the ring. Canelo versus Triple G2. It's going to be interesting because I think, I've watched this fight over and over and over again, it seems. And, I'm not going to discuss who won it in the first one. That's a rabbit hole of a debate that's not even worth our time. Let's talk about the actual technique that could be implemented by either guys or the strategies implemented by either guys to win this fight in the rematch. And obviously what we can look at from the first one. Triple G, in my opinion, in the first one, came into the fight just like he came into the David Lemieux fight, just like he came into the Daniel Jacobs fight. He had the same game plan heading into, and quickly Rubitsky, I thought I did answer that question when I first led with that topic. No, there's not going to be a face-off. From what I know, there's not going to be a single face-off heading into this matchup. But anyways, digressing. Triple G went in there, wanted to get in the mid-range, and box with Canelo. He really did. He wanted to go in there with his jab, establish that mid-range distance, and work the right hand. Find that right hand timing and placement, which obviously he never really got off, in my opinion. The right hand never really landed efficiently in the first fight, but obviously the jab was successful. I got a little bit into back and forth with Jonathan Snowden from, is he still with Bleacher Report? I believe he's with Bleacher Report and CNN and other outlets. Great guy, even though he's kind of a lightning rod of controversy sometimes. My opinion of Triple G in the first fight is that he never had the game plan or strategy to actually get on the inside and work from there. A la Maidana, a la Shawn Porter, and I think you know exactly what I mean when I mention those two guys. That style or that strategy of a fight. Instead, Triple G, when he would get on the inside, would actually jab his way out to reestablish his distance. So Triple G willingly would give Canelo the space Canelo needs to work his counter boxing game, to work the footwork, the slipping, and to really roll out and get out danger every time, because Triple G would give him the real estate to do that. He would. And also, Triple G was, in my opinion, headhunting a lot in the first fight. Like, he never really, in my opinion, had the mindset of, let me work the body to stop this guy from running around the ring. And I don't mean running as a derogatory sense. If you watch this show for any amount of time, I don't have any opinion about that. But instead, Triple G would jab his way to the mid-range, throw that right straight. Canelo would pivot, slip it, and roll out to his left and just reestablish positioning, reestablish distance, and you do that over and over again while landing counters. Instead, Triple G needs to take that extra half step or step get in on the inside, maybe even tie up Canelo with one hand, and start working some dirty boxing game. Use your height and your size to actually press up against Canelo and tire him out. Instead of, when you have him against the ropes, when you do have that inside positioning, do not retreat to the mid-range. Because he did that consistently throughout the first fight. And that, I think, was his downfall. Because, again, it allowed that room for Canelo to work his game. And let's be honest, Triple G is not going to be a back foot boxer mover like Laura, which I think is a true kryptonite to Canelo. Canelo doesn't do good moving forward. So Triple G is going to have to come forward. Well, if he's going to come forward, actually go all the way. Get on the inside, rough up Canelo continually, and press the body. That needs to be the prime target. You need to slow down Canelo. So by the mid-rounds to the late rounds, you can actually start working your right hand up top. Instead, Triple G did not do that in the first fight. And again, if he makes those corrections, I think Triple G could have a real chance of winning this. However, I still think Canelo, and now I'm talking about Canelo, breaking down what I saw from him in the first fight, I think it's pretty much consensus around the entire boxing world. His defensive head movement, footwork was impeccable, really. And really his own downfall was activity. It was the same thing we always talk about with Canelo. He fights in spurts. He fights in spots. And a guy like Triple G who's going to rack up the volume, even if he's not landing clean or landing at all, the optics of that are hard to deal with. So Canelo hopefully has improved on his cardio and to be able to throw more in combination. Instead of throwing the 1 or 2 punch counter to and then pivoting out, throw the 3s and 4s. And he would do that occasionally. And whenever he did, he would have massive success. Triple G would shell up. And I believe that if Canelo, in those spots is able to multiply it by 2 or 3, is able to actually win this one pretty handily, in my opinion. Triple G, even though I think defensively he is always a little bit underrated, he's still not elite in the defense department. He just isn't. He is hittable. He does shell up. And also, I would say Canelo worked pretty well when he went to the body of Triple G. Similar to Triple G and what I wish he would do. I think Canelo also needs to go to Triple G's body a lot. It's going to take away some of that power from the shots of Triple G. And again, you already have the speed and athleticism on your side if you're Canelo. To get that even more in your advantage, I think would be crucial for him. Again, this fight's razor thin in my opinion. Triple G, he needs to make a few minor adjustments to his game plan. An overarching strategy with specific tactics to achieve that strategy or strategic goal. And I've laid that out pretty good, I believe, or pretty well. And if he does that, he could win similar to Canelo pretty easily, in my opinion. Though I don't think he makes those adjustments. And I think the reason why is mainly due to Abel Sanchez, and that's probably a rabbit hole. And again, if you're picking Triple G, I have no real argument with it unless you call in. 323-870-4051. Call in, press 1. Get in the queue. Santiago's already in the queue. We'll go to you. I see Triple G being a little bit too slow on the draw. Obviously, the power of Triple G does not really affect Canelo. The power and durability factor between these two is really no difference. So then what does it come down to? It comes down to then game plan IQ and then I would say athleticism. And I would say with those two categories, Canelo, in my opinion, clearly has the advantage there. While the power and durability factor is pretty marginal if really there is any difference. Because we didn't see one in the first fight. Both guys got their shots off pretty well, got clean shots in, and neither guy was hurt. So when you combine that factor with Canelo being the faster, more explosive fighter, and also I would say he has the better game plan and strategy for a Triple G, I still feel like Canelo wins this. I do understand that there maybe is more of a consensus that Triple G won the first fight. I'm not in that consensus, so that's probably why I may have this bias in my preview of it, which is fine. I think we're all entitled to our bias. Again, call in 323-870-4051. Press 1 to get in the queue. or leave a comment below in the chat or in the comment section. Let me know if I'm right, wrong, where you disagree, where you agree, and how you break down this matchup. But we'll be moving on to some other fights of the weekend because, like I said, this one to me is a pretty clear-cut preview, even though it's a highly close fight. If you're picking Triple G, I can see why. He has paths to victory in this fight. If you're picking Canelo, I can absolutely see why, since I'm picking Canelo to win. He has paths of victory in this matchup. And when that happens, when you can see clear paths of victory, multiple paths of victory for both guys, it makes it a pretty intriguing matchup to see on paper. Cannot wait to watch this one. Again, live fight chat and immediate reaction on Saturday for this whenever the fight does go live. So we will be live here on YouTube talking about it and taking your calls and obviously review of it, breakdown of it, your immediate reactions to the matchup live on YouTube. Call in again. Same number as always, 323-870-4051. Press 1 to get in the queue. But moving on, because we do have some other fights this weekend on ESPN. And shout out to them for being smart, having a sort of 2 events heading into a massive weekend for the sport, and I think obviously you're going to see a lot of promotion for Triple G, Canelo on these 2 ESPN cards. You've already seen, I think, a ton of ESPN marketing and commercials, which makes a lot of sense. Even though it's not an ESPN fight, it does make some sense. Obviously we're going to get to, since that reminds me, so I'm talking about ESPN, before we get to the ESPN fights, that reminds me, I'm talking about why ESPN might be doubling down on this particular matchup and promoting it, or marketing it, I should say. Triple G is a network free agent after this fight. To make that a little more specific for everyone out there, he still has a K2 deal in place after this fight, but his HBO deal is up. Now, whether they have matching rights, whatever, those specifics, we do not know, but we do know he is a free agent. So DAZN, ESPN Plus, Showtime, all are now players for, obviously, Triple G after this weekend. Whether he wins or loses can obviously affect his sort of what's the term? Asking price? That's not the right term, but you know what I mean. It's going to be interesting to see his free agency value. That's probably better. Triple G, if he wins on Saturday, now he's a network free agent. Imagine the value he has going to ESPN, DAZN, Showtime. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. And obviously with Canelo, I'm not going to say the writing's sort of been on the wall that he doesn't want to be on HBO, but the writing's sort of been on the wall that he's not happy with at HBO, I would say. I think he feels like HBO is promoted and pushed Triple G more than Canelo. And that is just clearly the case. And if you're Canelo, you're Golden Boy. And again, Golden Boy having now deals with ESPN in some capacity. Don't know what the particulars are, but they have a deal with ESPN. And then on top of that, Facebook, you see people moving away. Like the pieces are really sort of moving away from HBO in a real quick way. So in ESPN's eye, if they start marketing this fight, there's that business loyalty factor. Triple G as a free agent say, hey, we promoted your fight, you won, you're a guy, make him do the media circuit, schmooze him up a little bit, give him all the cocktails he wants after the fight, and you pick him up. Even if he loses, it's still Triple G. I think he still has value. It may not be obviously as much as it was when he was undefeated and if he were to beat Canelo, but he still has value. Especially in the middleweight division. He just does. He is still a name that you can put a lot of guys over with. Anthony, don't even put that in the universe. Anthony Walker over there at ShareDog.com in the live chat saying, if Dana White is serious about Zuffa boxing, he should be having a conversation with Triple G after this fight. No. That's not allowed. Get out. That's some bad juju right there. Picture Manny Pacquiao's mom warding off evil demons right now when you mention shit like that. Zuffa boxing should be left in the dustbin of history as being a never has been, and I'm completely okay with that. But moving on, the Thursday card on ESPN2 and ESPN Deportes, Ruslan Madiev versus Pablo Cesar Cano. Good little fight at junior welterweight. Madiev, in my opinion, is going to be an interesting prospect if he can beat Cano. Marcelo Conejo versus Frashon Desjardins for the WBC interim super middleweight title, obviously, because Clarissa Shields is moving down to middleweight to fight Christina Hammer. Marcelo Conejo, obviously, being a Instagram fighter. Nah, that's probably too mean. I feel like that's derogatory. She has a following on Instagram. Like, she has a following in boxing. I'm curious to see how she does as sort of a co-main to this event on Thursday. On Friday, Jose Ramirez versus Antonio Orozco for Ramirez WBC junior welterweight title. Jamal Herring versus John Vincent Moraldi as well. Hiroki Okada versus Christian Correa. Gabriel Flores Jr. on the card as well. And Brian Vasquez, some other prospects so you sort of get an idea of. No real opinion on the undercard. They're all tune-ups or showcases, in my opinion. Now, the Ramirez-Orozco fight was interesting maybe a year or two ago, but Orozco, having went unconscious, I believe, and rushed to the hospital due to weight cut for this weight class. I'm cautious of him in this matchup. Jose Ramirez, in my opinion, should win this one. Even without that, I think he's the better technical boxer, obviously being an Olympian. And on top of that, has more power, more durability, just more tested at this weight class. He easily should win this one, but it should be a fun firefight for as long as it lasts on ESPN, not ESPN Plus. So again, if you're out there listening, you don't have ESPN Plus, you think, oh, I can't watch this fight. No, they're ESPN and ESPN2. You probably have those networks. But yes, some really interesting fights coming up. Anthony in the chat saying, LOL, you want the chaos. No, Anthony. Niger, get Anthony out of here. Thank you. I like to pretend like Niger just like Lee Harvey Oswald in the tower, just like popping off people whenever I want. That's how I imagine it. Moving on, some news from yesterday, I believe. I believe it was yesterday or the day before after we got off the show. But Frank Warren making some moves, saying he inks a multi-year content deal with Top Rank in ESPN. Interesting. Now, obviously, I think this is a good move for both parties, Frank Warren and ESPN. ESPN's the bigger network overall than Showtime, which it seemed to be Frank Warren's go-to network beforehand. Rubisky, to answer your question, I don't know. From last I heard, he wanted to spend more time with his family. To answer your question in the chat, but that's not what we're talking about here. Digressing back to the topic at hand. Frank Warren inking a multi-year content deal with Top Rank and ESPN. Great move for both entities, in my opinion. ESPN being the big overall conglomerate than Showtime. Frank Warren, in my opinion, having the perfect product for an ESPN, especially an ESPN Plus. The amount of content and fights that he produces at maybe not the highest level, but at a good level, a decent to good level, is pretty well known. Like, Frank Warren puts out a good product consistently, I would say. Has some good prospects in the pipeline like Daniel Dubois and Anthony Yard. It's going to be interesting to see, obviously, what he can do with pieces like that. But Frank Warren, again, I think this is perfect for him. ESPN is a bigger network. It's interesting that Showtime didn't sort of ink a deal with Frank Warren. It seemed like Showtime and Frank Warren, through Tyson Fury and Carl Frampton, have been working together for a while now, to be quite honest. Again, maybe that's an overstated relationship. We know how Showtime does with certain contracts with certain people and promoters, etc. It's not really all said in contract sometimes. It's not all set in stone. So it's going to be interesting to see, obviously, what happens here, when it's going to be, presented, when it's going to start happening. Interesting turn of events here for Frank Warren and ESPN. Again, ESPN making a lot of moves in boxing, which be interesting to see what the ramifications are long term, as they are such a big entity in this U.S. market. It's not just ESPN. They're owned by ABC. ABC is one of the big 4 over-the-air free TV channels. Not only that, ABC is owned by who? Disney motherfucker. Like, they own everything. So it's a microphone. It's a wrap. Like when you have Disney, the people that created the Marvel Avengers behind you, man, that's establishment media backing if there is one. Let's be honest. There's nothing better than that. So Frank Warren and them must be happy. Robisky, don't worry. I will get to that. That might be the next topic, actually. Let me see if it is. Yes, it is. We'll get to that. Robisky saying, Matt, the Garcia versus Porter numbers were terrible in my book. Yes, they were. Showtime's Porter-Garcia main event peaked at 690,000 viewers. It had an average of 619,000 viewers on Showtime. This is sad, guys. Sad. You know, it's even sadder is the HBO numbers, which we're going to get to. But, excuse me. Oh, God. A sneak attacked me there, but sorry about that. Porter Garcia, in my opinion, was supposed to do so much better than this. Like, obviously, it had competition. College football was on, UFC pay-per-view, HBO event. They had competition. It's not like it was dominating the entertainment sphere that night. However, I just assumed it was going to do more than this. I assumed it was going to do at least in the mid 700s, if not in the 800s. It's just weird. It's weird that it did this little. I don't know why that is, to be quite honest. This fight if you think about it, only did about 100,000. No, it did less than 100,000 more viewers on average than Danny Garcia versus Brandon Rios. Like that makes no sense. Zoe saying, or Zoe. It could be Zoe. It might not be Zoe. If it's Zoe, please let me know. And I've been pronouncing Zoe this whole time, and I apologize. Saying Khan done more than that on Sky Sports. No, this is bad. Like, for other guys, it's good, obviously. If Badu Jack pulled these numbers, it's decent, right? Like, it's pretty good. That Showtime's probably looking at it, like, hey, Badu Jack pulled this number. That's party time, But it's not. It's probably your biggest welterweight star in Danny Garcia. Or at least that's what it's always been told to us. That Danny Garcia is that guy in the welterweight division for Showtime. And he did this number. Ellie, to answer your question, Disney trying to take over Sky. God, that was reported years ago. I think that slowed down because big mergers like that are slow to happen. But for example, like the Disney acquisition of Fox, it's not all Fox. So Fox Sports, Fox News, some other Fox properties are not in that deal. And it's similar to Sky. Like for the Disney acquisition of Sky, it's not 100%, I want to say. It's acquiring certain parts of it. How that all happens, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and act like I am a economist that understands how monopolies work, such as Disney, because let's be honest, it's a fucking monopoly. But do some research. I would say I'll probably do some more as well. But last I checked, that never really went through the Sky and Fox or Sky and Disney merger, or whatever it was. Was it Sky or Fox? I think Fox was going to acquire Sky at one point. That fell through. Then Disney came in and wanted to acquire Fox, and then I think they came in and wanted to acquire Sky Sports, all that stuff at one point as well. The the prospect saying 20th Century Fox and Comcast are the ones in contention to take over Sky. No, that did happen, but I want to say Disney at some point did either make a bid or it was talked about. It was reported. It was, I want to say. Again, maybe I'm wrong. Whatever is happening in the big network world is way over all of our heads. Let's be completely honest about that. But Showtime just doing bad numbers. Not much to say about that. Here's a lack of promotion. I don't know. It just did not do good. Speaking of not doing good numbers, though, God, HBO peaked at 421,000 viewers, an average 298,000 viewers. Damn. Gonna be interesting. It's gonna be very interesting. I really don't have much to say about this other than these are bad numbers and it was expected. This one was expected. Like the Showtime one is more of a debate. Like how did that happen? With HBO, it was like okay, Estrada was your biggest name, and that doesn't mean much in 2018. But to be fair, this is a very low costly. Matt, the prophet saying, "Do the soundbite, Matt." You know it's a flop. Oh, I'm sorry. I do it. Sad day. The prospect saying no one cares about Superfly outside of hardcores, and you know what? Oh, yeah. Gary in Dallas, who maybe or maybe not be listening, I did watch Superfly 3. It was an alright card. Not much to say about it. I went in really cold about it. I didn't realize there was so much controversy over the Nietas and Pilate fight. I'm definitely going to go back and try to score that one because there's so much controversy about it. But it was an alright night. Ioka looked fantastic, but it was just an alright night. It was an alright event. It wasn't anything to write home about. It wasn't anything fantastic. The prospect's right. No one really cares about this event other than hardcores. And I would say us hardcores really didn't care much about this event, to be quite honest. Like maybe the Estrada fans, that the 100 of you out there that are Juan Francisco Estrada fans, maybe you guys cared. But other than that, it just didn't pique my interest at all, to be quite honest. And the fights themselves, the Oka fight was fun, but that was about it. I wasn't that intrigued about anything else on the card, to be quite honest. And Estrada, to me, just outclassed Orkuta, so it is what it is. But moving on to some more news. I skipped some. Let's go to this one first, though, because I reported on this yesterday, or not yesterday, the day before. Manny Pacquiao. Let's get some reading music out here. Yes. Sad music, not dramatic, sad. Manny Pacquiao on Instagram with a very dramatic picture. God, if you're listening on podcast right now, I deeply apologize for you not being able to see this picture right now. Go and look on Manny Pacquiao's Instagram if you can. It is fantastic. But anyways, digressing. Manny Pacquiao saying, my post from the other day was a result of a miscommunication between my team and Top Rank. Everything has been clarified. I would like to thank Bob and Top Rank, and by the way, not Bob Arum, not full name, just Bob. First name basis right there, just to point that out. I think it's important. And Top Rank for helping guide my career and for the many great years of working together. We have accomplished so many amazing things together. God, Manny Pacquiao, man, get the fuck out of here. Man, what the fuck? I thought you were a real one, man. I thought you were really going to go at Bob in Top Rank, and you didn't. Obviously, he got a big bag of money from Top Rank and the lawyers. Salute to them. What else is there to say? I mean, please let me know in the chat. I would love to hear you guys have your thoughts and call in 323-870-4051. God, the twilight of Manny Pacquiao's career is so humorous in so many ways that I really can't describe it. Like 30 years from now, when I tell my grandkids about Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather and how in the end of their careers, Mayweather fought an MMA fighter for $500 million and Manny Pacquiao fought on ESPN Plus against an unknown Australian and then tried to sue his promoter via Instagram, and then the day after apologized and said it was just a miscommunication. He said he just wants to thank Bobby. You know, like, come on, get the fuck out of here. Anyway, salute to Manny Pacquiao. What a legend. What a great. But again, I really don't have much to say about this other than it's hilarious to me. Manny Pacquiao walking back that Instagram post with this very dramatic pose. And obviously the lawyer tweaked caption. You know, it's hilarious. Ellie stating it perfectly. That was over before it started. Is what it is. Is what it is. But moving on, because that was pretty good. That made me laugh. Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman is in that mood.
Any of you radio personalities think you want smoke? Call me Mr. Chimney. I want smoke.
I think Thurman got the bug again, guys. I really do believe that Thurman's gonna come back. Obviously, I forget which podcast was it? Was it Boxing Esquire with, I forget his name. I do apologize if you're listening out there. But he had Tim Smith from PBC on, and he alluded to Thurman being on the undercard of Wilder Fury. Thurman's coming back like in the next 6 months. He's coming back rather quickly. Rubisky saying, Matt, I need that Triple G soundbite. Which one, Rubisky? Which one?
Are you off your tits? Have you been smoking something?
But digressing, Thurman obviously having that fire to come back, saying Spence is number 2 at 147, and Crawford is barely a champion. Oh, God. I love all the smoke being given out by Thurman. You know, even though I'm obviously a huge Terrence Crawford stan, and I will admit that till the day I die, Crawford leaped like into my top like 10, 15 like most enjoyable fighters to watch personally for me. Thurman's up there though. Thurman's really up there. I don't know if he can really bounce back the way he was, but if we get that version of Thurman that was beating Porter and beating Danny, he gives all these guys issues, man. Like he might give Spence and Crawford that work. I don't know if it happens. I don't know what version of Thurman we're getting, obviously, but it seems like Thurman's ready to come back. He's saying that in a few weeks there should be an announcement. I'm happy that he's coming back. We needed, I think, Thurman. I said this, I think, on either last show or some show. I forget what show I said it on, but I said on a show that when Mayweather retired, air quotes, then when it fought McGregor, we, as a boxing community, viewed Thurman as the guy once he beat Porter and Garcia. I think that was the consensus. Like, if you looked at 24 hours after that Garcia fight, even though it was a close fight, we all said Thurman's the guy. He's clearly the successor to that era of Mayweather and Pacquiao. Now, obviously, we knew Spence was coming up at that time. We knew that was going to be a big fight for Thurman. But Thurman seemed to be that guy. He seemed to be holding the keys to the division in a lot of ways. And then he let his foot off the gas. And now because of that, now there's not that consensus anymore. When 2 years ago it was, oh, Thurman's the guy. Here's the unifying champion. He's 2-time. You know, yeah, Spence is a prospect. Yeah, Crawford's at 140, but he needs to move up, fight someone. It was that narrative. Now it's, oh, well, Crawford beat Horn. Have you seen? Crawford's too good. He's too skilled. You know, he's ambidextrous, you know. Oh, Spence is too powerful. He hits too hard. You know, He's too athletic, whatever you want to say. So, and plus both of them now have belts now. The room for discussion and debate has widened so much now that Thurman is seemingly the quietest voice in the room. And I think in 12 months time, that will completely change. And that'll be good because, again, I think it's going to be a Thurman, Spence, and Crawford hierarchy in this division. And those three are going to have to figure it out, which one's the real best. I think Shawn Porter is amazing. No discredit to him, who obviously just fought this last weekend, had a great performance, played his career best. But I still think Porter is number 4 in that group. I still think Danny is number 5 in that group. And I feel like that shouldn't be disrespect, but it's okay to be number 5 in that division because look at that division. Look at the killers in that division. Look at the skill in that division. There is not a top 5 that can really contend with welterweight, in my opinion. Even though I think there is probably going to be at one point a very clear hierarchy of this top 5, it is still talent-wise, pound for pound, the best top 5 of any division. And Thurman coming back is needed. I think for Spence and Crawford to really get that legitimacy, they need to beat Thurman. I do think that. If Thurman doesn't come back and fight these guys, it hurts their legacy. It does. There's this weird missing link to the welterweight history we have if that happened. So, yeah, just long rant about Thurman. Glad he's back, man. Always a really fun guy to interview, etc. But stitching back to Manny Pacquiao. Saying Pacquiao is not convinced Conor really wants to fight. Duh. I saw that and I was like, yeah, that's kind of obvious. If Conor might want it, because I think Conor really knows where he's at. Conor knows he's not going to have a championship run in him. So get the biggest check. Pacquiao's probably the biggest check you have. So why not get that? I think that's just the reality of the situation here, whether or not he really wants that fight. Moving on, though, let's skip that news. Let's go to this one very quickly. Last boxing topic of the day. Then we go to Santiago for his call. Jesse Madaleno back in action, yes, versus Rico Ramos. Fun fight. Just glad to see Jesse back. Obviously he had a huge upset loss to Isaac Dogbe. And obviously what a meteoric rise and explosion of a performance that was for Isaac Dogbe. But Jesse, I still think, is one of the top 5 guys in that division. And it's good to see him back. He's going to be on ESPN+. He'll be fighting on September 28th at the Oracle Arena in Oakland, California. I believe that is the Uzcategui guard. So I'm hyped about that. Good for Jesse Madaleno and good for Rico Ramos. This is a huge opportunity for him. Let's be honest. Anthony Walker saying Conor versus Pac would be super trash right now. And honestly, at this point, I think Pac still just whoops him. I still think Pac catches him at some point and really hurts Amir Khan and he gets knocked out. That's my honest opinion about that. But going over to Santiago in LA, my good friend and occasional co-host. Santiago, how you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Just here driving around. About an hour and 10 to go before I can finally clock out of work and catching the show. A little late than I would have expected to catch it, but let's talk the weekend. Very excited. It's funny because I remember when Antonio Orozco was actually one of a good prospect to look out for, but after that incident with the weight loss, he's kind of got an asterisk on him now, and I can only imagine if he's not doing his weight cut properly, how much more that's gonna affect him. And it's a better fight than the Danny O'Connor fight for Ramirez. But it's still a fight that you got to favor Ramirez in, because
Agreed.
Ramirez, I think, has what it takes to be one of the next great champions at 140. But it's still a little early in his career, so we'll wait and see how he performs, because performance is everything over the wins. And moving over to the main event, the main day, the one that I might be joining you for, it's funny because when I first watched that fight, Canelo versus GGG, I had it 8-4 in favor of GGG very comfortably. I was of that consensus mindset, you know.
Agreed.
I felt that the fact that Canelo took most of the middle rounds off and maybe fought back within the last minute or 30 seconds of each round really hurt him. And anyone who's anybody knows that 118-110 scorecard is absolute dog shit.
Yes.
No one won it that way. So it'll be interesting to see because this is going to be a battle of adjustments. Who makes the better adjustment? Who makes the adjustments? Because it's that X factor for both men that'll determine who wins this fight out. Because obviously one of the biggest issues I've had with Canelo outside of his cardio is his inactivity. You know, you can see that more often than not he chooses to not fight and just move around, and that usually hurts him more than anything. And he's got the right opponent in a guy like Triple G, but Triple G's issue is he is more or less a mid-range fighter. He's never been the kind of guy who's going to be up to your chest and throw haymakers over you the way that a Maidana or a Porter does. So it'll really be a matter of every time that Canelo steps out of range, Triple G doesn't just accept the range, but steps forward and keeps that range within a favorable distance to himself. So it'll be interesting to see. Early prediction right now would be in favor of Canelo by decision. I do feel that at 36, we may just see the moment that Triple G slows down, that he looks like what we expected him to end up looking, and Canelo takes over because Canelo is 10 years younger. He's entering the prime of his career right now, and he has been a professional for over 10 years at this point. So it'll be interesting to see how the fight plays out. And the undercard is going to be nice too, especially the David Lemieux versus Gary Spike O'Sullivan. That was going to end a knockout no matter how you see it. There's no way that fight's going the distance. But if you have any other questions regarding any of the other topics, feel free to shoot. Otherwise, that's my call.
Thank you, Santiago. If you want to come back for the MMA topics, again, you know how to do that. Press 1 to get out of the queue. And then whenever you want to come back on, press 1 to get back in the queue. We're going to head over to the MMA topics of the show. And I hope that Anthony can get away from work a little bit and call in and discuss, obviously, the UFC Fight Night 136 Mark Hunt versus Alexei Oleinik fight card in Moscow, Russia. The first ever UFC card in Russia. Shout out to the Russian oligarchs. You know, Dana White and Trump, you know, they're getting down with, obviously, like Kadyrov and Chechnya and all those fun guys. So they had to go over to Russia at some point, you know. That's not surprising. But Mark Hunt versus Alexei Oleinik, interesting fight. Obviously, Oleinik has, I forget what the exact, is it an Ezekiel choke, I believe is what the exact submission is. He has this weird, stat where he has the most submissions, and it's it's a rare submission out of anyone. Hopefully Anthony can correct me in the chat. I believe it's an Ezekiel choke that he is known for. Mark Hunt, obviously a borderline 500 fighter, but a credential K1 world champion kickboxer at one point. A guy that's only fought really the top competition at heavyweight for going on 20 years now, let's be honest. Handle Stone saying, Mixed Combat Radio, I need your help, bro. What is it, Handle Stone? I'm here for you, man. I'm your therapist. Call in. Email me, mixedcombatradio at... Yes, I got the choke right. Thank you, Anthony. Yes. You know, so much of this is off the dome. You know, I don't take notes. So whenever I get something like that off the top of the dome, man, I feel happy about myself. I do. Anyway, Henderson, I know you're in the UK, so if you want to call in, email me, mixedcombatradio@gmail.com. I will email you an international call-in link that is permanent and absolutely free as well. So I'll keep that email open just in case anyone wants to email me to get that link. But moving on to basically, this fight, this matchup, the card itself. I think Mark Hunt, if this was even like a year or two ago, I would pick Mark Hunt. But as the years go on, and he seems older and older and older, and even though Alexei Oleinik is not that guy, hand for stone. I got it offline, and then I just photoshopped it. So to answer your question, I'm always down to help out people when it comes to this stuff. I found this overlay online, just took it, like Google Images, and then obviously the logos, everything, that's all Photoshop. That's all stuff I did on Photoshop, finding PNG files and stuff like that, and that's how I created this overlay. But I don't run this show off of Google Hangout. That's probably why. Maybe if you're doing Google Hangout or something and you try and do an overlay, it's not working. Because last I checked, the Google Hangout overlay feature was not working. That was broken. It breaks all the time. I run this show through a different software system. But anyways, I know it's very off topic, but I just wanted to answer that and get that out of the way. But digressing back to UFC Moscow event, Mark Hunt should, in my opinion, have obviously the striking advantage. Both guys are pretty long in the tooth, though I think Mark Hunt is obviously a little more wear and tear for him at the top. Alexei Oleinik has been a little more consistent, in my opinion, as of late. So I kind of want to go with him in my head because he just has been the better fighter overall lately. But I can see Mark Hunt just icing him with a left hook. Like, I can still see that. So I'm picking Oleinik via submission. It's close. It's not like Oleinik hasn't been knocked out before. He has. If that happened, would I be surprised? Not at all, really. But I also think that Mark Hunt in 2018 is a brand that you really can't bet on. It's a stock that you cannot buy in at this point, in my opinion. Even in matchups like this, which maybe, again, a year or two ago, Mark Hunt was on a run. He was looking pretty well, having that sort of like late career renaissance a la Robbie Lawler. But it's still 2018. I think that's going to be a contributing factor to this, is the fact that Mark Hunt has taken considerable damage and punishment lately that is just concerning. In the co-main event, Jan Blachowicz versus Nikita Krylov. Fantastic good fight. Just this alone makes the event. And the fact that we get the return of the Russian Al Capone and Nikita Krylov, again, this is something that the UFC has needed. I bet Anthony can probably echo this. Nikita Krylov was a light heavyweight prospect that had character, was fun, entertaining fights. Maybe not obviously the guy that was going to be your champion, but he was fun. He was that good, like bottom of the top 10, top 15, because light heavyweight isn't that good right now, sort of guy that just adds some character to your division. And obviously, the light heavyweight division is so barren at this point. Dana, the champion of the division's off doing whatever, God knows what, at heavyweight. You need guys. You need sort of some breath in this division to keep it going. Nikita Krylov is that. Even though the UFC got rid of him for a period of time, I think that was a bad move. He obviously has won fight after fight after fight since then. Has looked awesome fighting Jan Blachowicz. Love that matchup as well. I'm picking Krylov because, I'll be honest, I'm a fanboy. Nikita is awesome, man. He is just a fun fighter. Anytime you come out as the Russian Al Capone, even though Reebok doesn't let him do it, the Al Capone get-up he had back in the day, that was some good shit. Andre Velasquez also on the card. Thiago Alves on the card. CB Dalloway on the card. Peter Yan making his second UFC fight. Cannot wait to see that. Rustam Khabilov versus Cajun Johnson. Khabilov should win that one, but I'm always a fan of what Cajun Johnson's doing outside the cage, obviously. But it looks like Anthony has called in to obviously talk not only Moscow, but hopefully we can talk a little bit about the Fabricio Werdum PD test and all that, or PD positive test and suspension. And obviously, I want to get your thoughts on Canelo Triple G too. So, Anthony, how you doing, man? It's been a while.
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. It's another day in paradise.
Yeah, had to step away from the desk for a little bit. I've been working hard for some hours. Figured I could use a fight break to discuss punching people in the face, which is one of my favorite topics.
It is up there with favorite topics. It is.
It's a close second to kicking people in the face. So,
I'm just thinking when you said that, I instantly thought of Jeff Neal and just that insane knockout kick, man.
Dude, all right. So I know you've talked about 228 yesterday, but I mean, got to get it off my chest.
Go, man. You can talk about whatever you want, Anthony. You can talk about whatever you want on this call. I will not stop you. It's okay.
Oh man, 228 was just like a beautiful symphony of violence. That Jeff Neal knockout was one of the scariest things I've ever seen. The way he kept nailing him with that left straight over and over and over. And it's just like, with every strike that landed, you just wonder, like, how long is this man going to be able to stand up? How long? And then the kill shot comes in. And then for that to not even get a performance bonus at the end of the night just shows you the level of savagery that was all over 228.
I was legit bummed he didn't get that performance bonus. And then you had the article come out today on, I think it was MMA Fighting, where he talks about how he has to work 50 hours a week as a server at a restaurant to make ends meet. That's the guy that should be getting a performance of the night bonus.
Yeah, agreed. I think that maybe the UFC should be, not that they don't have the money to just throw people bonuses all the time. I mean, one thing for sure, like there was always that talk in the Zuffa, the early Zuffa days about the locker room bonuses, and they just discretionary bonuses that they may not even tell the fighter that they were going to get, but they go to the mailbox and they got a check for X amount of tens of thousands of dollars to thank them for putting on a good performance, or to thank them for doing their part in promoting the fight or whatever. I hope that's still a thing. If not, there needs to be at least some sort of guaranteed structure that the prelim fighters who are really dogging it out there for peanuts at least have the promise of getting something. To see the Irene Aldana, and I'm going to mess up her opponent's name, Polidova fight.
Sure.
They did end up winning fight of the night, but it was really in jeopardy considering how much good stuff was going on, and the way those two, damn near killed each other. They didn't get paid, but I think they got paid, like, I think it was like a 30 to show, 30 to win, and the other somewhere in the 15 range. Like, that's nothing compared to the years they took over each other's lives.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I completely agree.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also, and definitely, Tyron Woodley put on a hell of a show, choking out Darren Till. And, I do recognize that is a great accomplishment. He handed him his first defeat. He stopped another hype train, et cetera, et cetera. But you're talking about a champion who's getting pay-per-view points. He probably doesn't need the performance bonus on top of that if you're only giving out, a couple of those.
Yeah, that was my thinking about it, is that the idea that, hey, let's only give these performance of the night's bonus to the top people on the card makes a little sense. Like that, I think that's just a PR move, honestly, at this point. Like it's a $50,000 PR move to hype up their marquee fight, so to speak.
I just want to take a little trip down memory lane real quick. I don't know if you remember, I think it was UFC 124, and that was the one time that they opened up the voting for fight, knockout, and submission to fans, and everybody voted on GSP versus Josh Koscheck, which was such a boring fight.
Because all the Canadians were just so happy that GSP broke Josh Koscheck's orbital bone like in the first round. Oh, that was so good. Dana White was so pissed off.
Yeah, how that one, how people voted on that as fight of the night. That had to just been they love GSP, because there was no other reason to give any award to that fight for excitement. But
it's like when you see whenever a promotional company or network puts the Twitter poll or Facebook poll up of who won that fight, and you always get like the 10% of dumbasses that just voted for the guy that obviously lost. You have that crowd. Yeah. It's that crowd. That's what it is.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of the fight world of Twitter, and maybe less so in boxing. I'm not as ingrained in boxing Twitter as I am MMA Twitter. Mm-hmm. But man, MMA Twitter is rife with a bunch of dummies who have no idea what they're talking about. and they will vote all sorts of stupid stuff on those polls. They say the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life, and I don't understand how someone can really call themselves fans of sport because they have no idea what they're looking at. But whatever, what do I know? I'm just a guy.
I mean, we are talking about a country that did vote for Donald Trump to be president. So, I mean, looking for intelligence.
We are talking about a sport where the president is friends with the actual president, but that's another story.
I mean, there's a correlation between the two. I'm not going to point it out. I'm just saying there's a correlation between the two.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's MMA Twitter is a minefield for everybody who's listening to Mixed Combat Radio. If you are not a part of MMA Twitter, join it and feel better about your intelligence level because it's crazy out there.
Oh, it's a good time. What are your thoughts on the fights this weekend, Anthony? Canelo Triple G, UFC Moscow.
I'm on duty for the Sherdog for Canelo Triple G too. I'm kind of expecting something very similar to the first fight. I had Triple G winning it. I think I want to say I had it 7-5 for Triple G. As the last caller said, the Adelaide Bird scorecard, the 118 to 110 was just the dumbest thing ever, and she should be banned from ever even watching a fight, even recreationally. Like, she is the worst judge that's probably ever walked the face of the earth, and she has screwed up boxing and MMA scorecards since the day before forever. So I had to get that off my chest again. But I think that fight is going to be pretty interesting. I wonder what. I mean, without throwing out the accusations or whatnot, it's definitely a cloud of suspicion over Canelo, and he does look different than he did in the lead up to the first fight. I wonder if the difference in fitness is going to have some sort of issue on it or some sort of impact. Triple G is pretty much going to be the same guy. I think he's just going to follow the same game plan, maybe even turn up the aggression. I felt that in the first fight, he would get Canelo up against the ropes or in the corner and start doing a little work and then be really afraid or respectful of the counter and back up too much.
Yes.
And let Canelo have the opportunity to keep those rounds close, which is even how the outcome of this fight got into jeopardy in the first place, because Triple G turned off the gas, I think, at the wrong times. So if he makes that adjustment, I think he should come out the winner of this, especially if we're looking at a Canelo that hasn't been, going to a taco truck with, questionable meat. He might have a much better experience trying to get him up out of there this time. But I still see both of those guys as being too tough to finish, so it's probably going to go to decision.
I agree. I think neither guys are going to get a finish here. I don't think either guy really has the power, or I should say both guys just have the chin and the durability to really make it out of this fight no matter what happens, in my opinion. And in terms of the adjustments that need to be made by both guys, I'm always questioning of Abel Sanchez as a trainer. I feel like he's a very one-dimensional trainer in what he implements and what he trains his fighters to do. A la when Murat Garcia fought Alexander Usyk for the undisputed cruiserweight championship for the World Boxing Super Series finale. Garcia made zero adjustments in the ring. It seemed like he came in there with a bad game plan, and I feel like that is just an issue Abel Sanchez and his team have, is that lack of game planning.
Yeah, I mean, you got to, at this level, you've got to have game plans. Like, you can't go in there with people. You can't go in there and just expect things to just play out as it goes on, unless you're a Mayweather, and that guy stays in shape year round. He's one of the smartest minds in boxing history. I mean, so maybe in that sense, if the fighter has that mind, yeah, maybe you can get away with the training being, one particular kind of way. But I always get this. I get the sense with Triple G that he's more of He's more the guy that you program to do things, as opposed to the guy who's going to think on his feet and make these mid-fight adjustments without getting his corner's advice first. So if Abel Sanchez isn't giving him something new, then that could be an issue.
Agreed. And then also I think Canelo's athleticism is such a major factor in this fight. I mean, even though Triple G is not like a non-athlete himself, he's 36. He's always been a little bit slower than his contemporaries, in my opinion. And then on top of that, Canelo's an athlete. Like, even though PD abuses aside, he is still an athlete. Like, even though you mentioned his body changing, I don't put much stock in that, to be honest. I think he is still without the clenbuterol, even if you want to assume he was on that. I still think he should be far and away the more faster, more explosive guy in there. And just that footwork, the defense of Canelo, I think will probably lead him to victory, in my opinion.
It's interesting you say that, because I covered the open workouts for the first fight, and I'm sitting there, ringside when they're doing everything, and the stark difference between both of them seemed to, and body wise, seemed to be like Triple G was like, he looked like the farm guy. He looked farm boy strong, like really broad back, not necessarily a lot of definition, but you could tell he was solid. He looked like the guy who had just been doing like Rocky style training in Part 4 when he's in the Russian house in the middle of nowhere. Like, he looked like he's doing that sort of training. Canelo looked more of the Dolph Lundgren, Ivan Drago type, where it's like he's chiseled and he looked like he was more created in a laboratory than he was doing a workout in a rinky-dink gym somewhere. It's like the difference in the science of their approaches. I think it shows in how they fight as well. So it's just that Triple G is so ungodly tough, and he's so relentless that he can negate a lot of those athletic disadvantages that he would have against Canelo. But at the same time, Father Time is undefeated, and the clock is ticking. The man is is officially pushing 40, and that's not something you don't want to step in there on against Canelo, and then all of a sudden now you look old.
Agreed. Thoughts on the UFC Moscow event?
I'm kind of. It's interesting that the first Moscow event has such a lack of casual star power, because they've been trying to hype up going to Russia for a very long time now. Obviously Khabib and Conor is too big of a card to put in Russia, considering the pay-per-view changes that would mean for the U.S. So you knew that wasn't going to happen. But I don't know. It almost seems kind of lackluster that this is the Russian debut that they've made such a big hype about for such a long time. Maybe this would have happened sooner had Fedor been signed a couple years ago when he became a free agent again. Maybe they would have made this trip already. At least you got Mark Hunt on there and Nikita Krylov coming back. But once again, you're talking about names that are bigger, that within the fight world bubble, and this is also a Fight Pass card. It's not going to be something that's intended to ring everybody's bells. But I thought Moscow would be the city that you want to ring everybody's bells in.
Now, remind me, was the first Dublin card, was that McGregor versus Diego Brandao, or was the one before that?
I believe there was one before that. I think there was one before that, and forgive me for not remembering what it is off the top of my head, but I don't know if you've seen this picture. It was
there was the Chuck Liddell fight, right? The Chuck Liddell fought in Dublin, like at UFC 73 or something like that. That's right. Okay.
I don't think Liddell fought on the card, but he was in the crowd, I think, and Conor took a picture with him. Why do I want to say that? Was Marcus Davis on that card?
Yes, I think Marcus Davis was on the card. I think he was the only Irish, air quote, Irish fighter that on the roster at the time.
Exactly. Yeah, they and his nickname, the Irish Hand Grenade. They put him on that card to put butts in seats in Ireland. I do remember that. I don't remember what the main event was off the top of my head, but that was, I think, the only other time they've been to Dublin.
I'm looking it up. Well, it's not Marcus Davis. He never fought in Dublin. Damn.
Was it Belfast in there?
No, it wasn't Belfast. At least Marcus Davis wasn't on a card in that country. He's only fought in the U.S. Oh, hold on, never mind. Hold on, sorry. I was looking at his boxing record. Damn Wikipedia.
Oh, okay.
I'll find it. Hold on 1 second. As I'm looking this up, and you're giving me dead air.
Oh yeah.
It was Belfast. It was Belfast. It was not Dublin, and it was UFC 72, which was, as I click on it, it was Rich Franklin versus Yushin Okami, and Forrest Griffin was on the card.
Oh, so we weren't far off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So UFC 17, that makes sense. Yeah. So even when they went to Dublin, McGregor headlined that card, and it turned out to be like a huge success, considering that it was on Fight Pass. You would think there would be like a bigger name to throw in the main event for the Russian card. It got some notable Russian guys on it, but also names that are not quite ringing the bells, like Rustam Kovalov. He's, we know who he is, but we're kind of fight nerds, so.
I mean, who else on their roster other than Khabib could really be that guy? Like, Zabit isn't that. Like, Zabit Magomed Shaparov isn't that guy yet, in my opinion.
He's not that guy yet, but you have him headline a card on Russia, he could be that guy. You could create him into that guy at that point. He probably would have been my first candidate to this. Like, if you put him against Yair Rodriguez for that main event, I think that would have been pretty dope. Although I still don't think those two should fight yet.
Agreed, yeah.
That's another story.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I don't know. I just think that it's a market that obviously there's a ton of Russian and Eastern European MMA fighters, and that's just a huge market right now. It's just not going to translate to the U.S. market, I think, at least at first. Like, not the way that Brazil did, not the way that even Japan does. Like, those markets don't translate to the U.S. audience in the casual sense as much as they do much more so than Russia, in my opinion. Because Brazil, Anderson Silva was a champion at the time. Like, you start running down all the Brazilian names that were pushed, were pay-per-view stars, Vanderlei Silva, etc. Those markets just have much more of a casual awareness than Russia at this point. That's a very geo-specific market. Because like a lot of these fighters on the card, like I've never heard of. Like some of them are undefeated.
Oh, yeah.
I assume they're really talented, but like when Peter Yan came on his last UFC debut, never heard of the guy before. I'll be honest, just never heard of him before.
Mm-hmm.
And he put on a great win against, who was it? That was a pretty break. Teruto Ishihara from Team Alpha Male.
Mm-hmm.
I never heard of this guy before, but obviously he's talented. There's obviously some talent here. So it's one of those things where I think like 5 or 10 years from now, this sort of movement towards this market might have some actual effects in this market over here. But right now, it seems very isolated to being that demographic and that market over there, and not this one.
Yeah, it is a pretty isolated market. I mean, one thing, it could just be a test run. I mean, that would make some sense if the UFC is just trying to throw a feeler out there and see what sort of traction they get. The problem is, though, that when the UFC typically goes to a city for the first time, it's a huge, huge deal, almost no matter who's on the card.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes like it's this huge thing. But then, like they did with Brazil, you just start eventually just throwing things there because, okay, people want to see it, and then the product gets more and more diluted to the point where now, typically, if a card is in Brazil, it's probably not going to be a good card. It's probably not going to have too many big names on it. Every so often, we'll have Nunes versus Cyborg or something like that. That's going to headline a card in Brazil. You might have that sometimes, but it's very few and far between.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course. I mean, the UFC is still a U.S. product in a lot of ways. You know, it's owned by a U.S. corporation. It's predominantly run in the U.S. Think about it. They're just starting to sort of understand that the U.K. is a huge fight market. We have yet to see the UFC go to Mexico, which is a gigantic fight market. You know, the UFC, I think, is just it's very new still. I think we forget how new the UFC is at this point still.
Well, the thing is also they've tried to go into those markets before. They've tried Mexico. They've had a couple of cards in Mexico City. They put a big push behind Cain Velasquez. But the problem is, like, when they get so laser focused on one particular aspect of something, it becomes at the detriment of everything else. So you focus on Cain Velasquez and you forget, oh yeah, he can't actually speak Spanish. Like, we have to teach him how to speak Spanish. Oh, and Cain keeps getting injured. We can't keep him healthy. Oh, okay, he just got knocked out by Junior Dos Santos. And it's like all these little things kept happening to interrupt that, but they were still so centrally focused on Cain. So then they throw together the Tough Latin America. You know, you get a gem out of that in Yair Rodriguez, and then you cut him because he wanted to negotiate for more money to fight Magomed Shapirov at 227. So there seems to be a consistent, okay, we're going to follow this train till the wheels fall off, no matter what other obstacles come in the way, no matter what other better options present themselves or alternative strategies. So even with the UK, they really tried the UK for a long time. I mean, Michael Bisping was such a well-paid fighter, considering that, you know, for most of his career, he was kind of middling around, you know, the bottom of the top 10 of the middleweight division for a long time, until he finally kind of had that improbable run to the title. But they kept throwing money at him. They kept giving him the opportunities. They kept giving him all those looks because they wanted that. You know, when Dan Hardy first popped up and he knocked out a few people, they got such a hard on for Dan Hardy that he gets rushed into a GSP title shot that he had no business in. And they really try to convince us that Dan Hardy could beat GSP. They really try to convince us of that.
To piggyback off of that,
they needed that UK push.
To piggyback on top of that, I think, you know, the UFC, like you said, has always been of the mindset that, okay, this one guy is going to open the doors to this kingdom. And that's not how it's traditionally done. Traditionally, when you want to build up a fight market, it's grassroots. It's like, look at what's happening in Africa over there. You had grassroots, small, local, regional promotions in the last, I would say, 10, 15 years. And because of that, you have an effect of, wow, now all of a sudden you have all these naturally skilled, talented prospects coming out of Africa that weren't there. The UFC didn't need a Francis Ngannou and to go main event in where's Ngannou from? Well, which African country? I forget.
He's from Cameroon.
Cameroon. Like, they didn't have to do that because regional grassroots promotions did that work. Similar to the UK does a very good job of grassroots promotions, a la Cage Warriors and other promotional companies. However, that's always been very separate from the UFC. That's why the UFC has never been able to really piggyback off of that, in my opinion. The UFC, for example, sort of needs a WEC-like feeder organization in these local regional scenes to really benefit off of it. And instead of hyper-focusing on one particular guy or woman to open the floodgates to this market, focus on producing a small regional scene there that produces a dozen or 24 good to great prospects. Then you can sort of find which one's the best one for you. Instead of, again, thinking that you're going to build up a star in the UFC and then transmit him to that market as some star over there. That's not how it's done.
Yeah, I think maybe the best example of that, I mean, there's certainly flaws to what they're doing. I mean, there are major flaws to how they're doing it, but Invicta might be the best window into that sort of mentality. Like I think they can do a much, much better job of putting some life in that organization because they let them build up somebody. And granted, it may not create the biggest following in the world, but I've been to several Invicta shows, and it's always a lively crowd. It's always an exciting show. The top-notch production, the staff there is incredible and stuff. But the UFC just plucks the champion away. And then, Shannon Knapp somehow finds some other people that are talented and that are worthy of a shot, and the UFC plucks them away. But what I have the issue with, I guess, is that they pluck these people away, and they don't, and then they just treat them like anybody else.
Yes.
So
good point.
You pluck someone like Megan Anderson, who is seriously one of the best prospects in all of mixed martial arts, male or female. You pluck her away, throw her in a very ill-advised fight against Holly Holm, and you haven't heard anything since. Nothing. They gave her a couple of looks, like they brought her to a couple UFC events, and she talked to some reporters backstage. But after that, nothing. You hear nothing. You pluck away Olivia. I'm gonna mess up her name too, but Souza, who was the strawweight champion that Angela Hill defeated in Invicta. You pluck her away and you just throw her in there against anybody because, oh well, she's just another part of the roster now. Like, you're not. The work that it took to build some of these fighters up is being lost, and especially since that work is being broadcast on UFC Fight Pass, Cage Warriors now included in that list. Like, let's start funneling a little more life into them, so you can even build up Fight Pass, and then in turn that can build up the main UFC cards. Bring more light back to those lower organizations, so that now it just keeps cycling into itself. It keeps creating more and more momentum, and everybody's happy.
Not to be a little bit more of a pessimist about it, but I agree with everything you said. That's what they should do. That's how I sort of view it. But ever since Eric Winter left UFC Fight Pass, and I honestly want to say ever since Joe Silva left as matchmaker, it just doesn't seem like a well-oiled machine over there. It doesn't seem like everyone's on the same page and clicking, and they're running on all cylinders here, in my opinion.
All right. I think as far as Joe Silva's departure, I think everybody's clearing out my office right now, so I can come out of the break room and continue speaking to you. But yeah, so I think as far as Joe Silva's departure, the matchmaking definitely is a bit different now. But I think on the prelims it's actually been pretty damn good. I don't think anything has been lost. In fact, I think more has been gained. We've seen more exciting preliminary card fights, and they're doing a really good job of finding talent and matching them up appropriately, so we have something exciting to watch.
That's true, but I would say that the
organization, the higher up organization, is screwing up as far as this push toward entertainment for your main events as opposed to sporting integrity. That's where I think the disconnect is.
I would say they're just disconnect, period. Like, I think that's my greater point, is that when you had the Joe Silva, Fertitta age, even though it was very much a dictatorship over there, it was run smoothly. It was run where everyone was on the same page. Nowadays, the PR department, the matchmaking department, everything doesn't seem like it's on the same page here in the UFC. That's sort of my outside perspective of it. That, like you said, the matchmakers are doing a pretty good job on the undercard. I agree with you on that. Even though the PR department does an awful job of promoting it. And on top of that, Dana White does an awful job promoting it, even though he's the face of the company. I think that's the disconnect on all these departments within the UFC is what I see. This breakdown in the cohesiveness of this entity that we've known for so long that was at one point only really 3 or 4 people in control. And now it's who knows how many people are really in the boardroom and really talking about what should be done and how they all may not be agreeing with each other. They all may not be communicating with each other. That's what I view or how I see it happening right now.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Because originally, when we think about what the UFC used to be, I mean, when Dana White and the Fertitta brothers were the only 3 really running the show, You're looking, and Joe Silva, of course, too. You're looking at all four guys who are massive fight fans, and they really cared about the sport itself. You can say whatever you want about their business practices,
yes,
their anti-union stances and everything else that you want to bring up that's negative. At the end of the day, they were fight fans. I mean, Lorenzo was a member of Nevada Athletic Commission. He was one of the commissioners. So you're talking about guys who are deeply entrenched into the fight world, whether they come to it as trainers or managers or martial artists or whatever perspective they've had, they cared about that. So now when you have, WME or Endeavor or whatever they're calling themselves now, when you have this organization running the show and, Conan O'Brien and Miley Cyrus are part owners of the promotion, they know fuck all about mixed martial arts. So I expect there to be some fuck all type decisions being made, and you have a department that normally would be in charge of making movie posters or whatever they do. Now all of a sudden they're trying to push the number 3 contender to make somebody care about him. Like it doesn't make any sense. They laid off so many people who had worked for the UFC and were entrenched in the fight world to be replaced by people from the entertainment world. And,
yes,
this is sports entertainment, but there's a massive disconnect in running an actual sporting organization if that's the approach you take.
Completely agree with that. I forget the name of he was the head of the European UFC department. I forget the name of him. Who was there forever. When they let him go, and that was sort of like the big first exec that was let go in that long run that included guys like Eric Winter and Joe Silva getting sort of his severance package in a way. At that moment, I think we're going to look back on it. I think we're already sort of looking back on it now as a massive paradigm shift within the UFC and how it runs operations. And I think we didn't really realize it at that point. But when they cut, like you said, 25% of their executive force, basically, and then replaced it with people that don't know the fight game, we've seen that now. The last couple of years have been the effects of that decision, for good and for bad. I think guys like Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard have done the best they can with a disorganized company. It's just going to be interesting to see, talking about disorganized, sort of moving off this topic, USADA in the UFC, Fabricio Werdum.
Oh, yeah.
Fabricio Werdum, I didn't even know he tested positive for something, and all of a sudden now he is banned for 2 years. All of this, obviously, on the back of John. Obviously, on the back of John Jones being tested. Yeah, it did. All of this on the back of John Jones being tested one time this year. Still have no idea what is happening with him. What's your take or what's your opinion on Fabricio Werdum and this whole situation? And then you can't take it to USADA as a greater point. You can't take it to USADA as a greater point if you want.
Yeah, well, yeah, this definitely goes to USADA in a greater point because the way they handled the Werdum thing. Now, granted, maybe I missed the headline. Maybe you missed the headline. But
I doubt it.
I don't remember hearing anything about Werdum having a test failure. But this was 4 months ago. So whatever the failure popped up, they must have gone through the whole process of retesting it and the B sample and everything, and then they've announced this decision. So I like that approach to it. If you don't know for sure what's going on, there's no need to smear someone's name in the media. There's no need to make a fuss about a particular fighter and have people question them and their legacy, et cetera, and they lose all these important opportunities because there's the potential violation. Let it breathe. Let it breathe. Test that B sample. Talk to the interested parties and legal teams or whatever else needs to go on so that you can get to the bottom of the situation, and whatever happens is something fair and reasonable. Now, it's also very, very unreasonable that this happened within 4 months. This test failure, a B sample's been tested, and now a punishment has been handed out, and that's what it is. Werdum is gone for 2 years, but it's been a year and 2 or 3 months since John Jones tested positive, and we don't know anything. And there's still that rumor that he's going to be headlining at 230 in just a matter of weeks.
We are what, 3 weeks away? We're what?
Zero sense.
How far away are we from UFC 230? Like what? Like 59 days? Like 40 days? Like we're within the 8-week mark, right? Aren't we?
Right. We're in spitting distance. Now we're definitely in range to where a main event should be announced. I think the tickets go on sale next week. So
how does that happen?
There has to be a main event announced. You know what? Even if you just decide, okay, we're going to promote Diaz and Poirier to the main event, you got to tell people something. Otherwise, how many people are going to be buying these tickets?
I don't know. How can you sell tickets without a main event? Like that makes zero sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, if this is a card that's, that this is the UFC's triumphant return to Wichita, Kansas or something, that's one thing. And yeah, you can put almost anybody in that main event, and Wichita hasn't seen, the glories of mixed martial arts at a high level since ever. UFC Fight Night 74.9 or whatever. So you can do that. But not at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
You've made a tradition now that November in Madison Square Garden, history gets made. We saw McGregor get the dual division belts. We've seen, the first Woodley Thompson fight. We've seen some really great things in Madison Square Garden. And you can't just give them anything at this point.
Wasn't GSP Michael Bisping? Wasn't GSP Michael Bisping?
Yeah, GSP.
Yep.
Yeah, I forgot. That's the day I got married, so I forgot. I didn't watch that live.
That's excusable.
But yeah,
that's understandable.
GSP won, dual division champion there. You see historic things happen there. I'm sorry, but you can't change that now. And especially this is, I think the main event announcement should be coming by next week when I think there's a press conference scheduled for McGregor and Khabib.
Yes.
You got to make a splash. Like, you got to make a splash. How much of a letdown will it be to have Khabib and Conor, doing whatever they're doing at this press conference, and there's God knows how many F words and how many water bottles are getting thrown or whatever else is going to go on in bear wrestling that we're going to see at this press conference, and then to just say with a whimper, oh yeah, we couldn't find anything else, so Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier are going to be your main event in Madison Square Garden, and this press conference is taking place in New York, so
it makes sense that's you have to announce your main event here. You do. You're right.
You got to do it, and it's got to be big. It's got to be something that's going to get people out of their seats.
So,
John Jones is one of the few names that can do that. Of course, that's going to raise other serious red flags.
Now, I want to come back to that because that's exactly what I want to talk about. In my opinion, my gut feeling on it is that we are getting John Jones in some sort of comeback fight at 230, whether it's at heavyweight, whether it's against Alexander Gustafsson, whatever it is. I think he's the main event at UFC 230. I don't think DC is going to be involved. I think DC is going to be smart and wait for that Brock Lesnar fight. And obviously, he's only been tested one time this year. And I think it was Jed Goodman on Twitter. Shout out to Jed Goodman, one of the best out there. He posted all of the undercard fighters at UFC 228 this last weekend and all of their USADA test. Every single undercard fighter was tested more than John Jones this year. Every single one. None of them were tied. There wasn't any that were tied with John. No, all of them had more tests than John Jones. And some of them, it was 4 or 5 or 6. And these are undercard fighters, like Jeff Neal getting tested 4 times. There's no reason you should be testing Jeff Neal 4 times and John Jones 1 time. Zero. There's zero reason why.
If I'm not mistaken, they've tested Ronda Rousey multiple times since she last fought, and she ain't even coming back.
Yes.
So it's like, what are they doing? I mean, if they're not, and you're talking about, and John Jones, you're talking about a multiple time violator. That's the thing that's silliest about this. It's one thing if you're testing, I don't know, just pick a random. You're testing Shogun, every other day, and he's never popped for anything. So you're testing him because it's random, whatever. But to then test people who have not popped at all in favor of someone who has tested positive, 66% of the time he's been booked under the USADA era. I'm sorry, we're doing it wrong. If that's the case, we're really doing it wrong.
At the very least, it's mismanagement of fund and resources, and I highly doubt it's just that. Like, I'll be honest,
Oh yeah.
My red flags go up when I see this. When I see two corporate entities that are tied together, there is very little to zero transparency between that. Also, zero accountability to these two entities. No one's in charge of USADA and the UFC. They're completely in charge of their own deal and how it's structured and how it's actually implemented. It's really concerning here on so many levels. The Brock Lesnar, Mark Hunt situation, that was a red flag, and I didn't really dwell on it too much. I didn't think about it too much, but this one to me, it's the final nail in the coffin for USADA and its reputation with the UFC, in my opinion, because there is no logical sense as to why this should be happening.
Yeah, I mean, if this happens and USADA doesn't have the best of explanations, then, I mean, you can pretty much just throw their credibility right in the trash.
Well, I don't even want an explanation.
There's no.
I don't want an explanation. There's zero transparency. Even if Jeff Nowinski comes out here and says, "Well, we tested him so many times afterwards, and we had an arbitration," I don't want to hear it. Where's the camera for that arbitration? Was media allowed there? Yeah. No. Then I don't trust it. I don't trust the process here at all.
Yeah, I'm not buying it. And when Jeff Nowinski is also appearing on Joe Rogan's podcast and essentially, defending Jones as much as he can, like, it makes zero sense to me. I mean, just throw the whole damn thing away if this is what's going to happen. You might as well just have the UFC be tested like boxing, where it's done fight by fight basis. It's no real oversight to it, and people are doing it, and it's just going to happen. And you just accept it as part of the sport. Either you do it that way, and leave it that way, or you do USADA properly, or whatever organization of your choice does it properly and does it fairly and does it to where there's integrity to the process. If there's no integrity to the process, why go through the process in the first place? Why would then you throw away the main event for UFC 200 only to extend more privilege to Jones in the future to save the Madison Square Garden card? You might as well just not even open that can of worms and just let it rock the way it was. That's just my take on it. I don't quite get what's going on, but one thing I would get is consistency. And we don't see consistency, and that's probably the biggest problem with the UFC, period. I mean, even to Nico Montoya getting stripped, the consistency is just non-existent. So it's kind of like we're just making up things as we go along, no matter how little sense it makes.
Yeah, that whole Nico Montana thing is really upsetting to me because I've seen media members that I respect, their views on fights I truly respect, come out and kind of defend that move. And kind of put the whole, she, it's all about weighing in. She didn't weigh in. If she weighed in, she would have got stripped. And that's such a bankrupt argument that I really find no value in debating it. If you're out there defending the UFC and what they did to Nico Montana, then you're probably just a bad person. You're probably not the smartest person either, and you're probably a bad person because I almost guarantee you're out there saying, "Yo, prayers and thoughts for Max Holloway. I hope he's okay." Yeah, fuck you. If you're out there and you're that guy, fuck you, because that's ridiculous. And the double standards that we see in this sport is so blatantly obvious that it's sort of like the whole, the UFC being a basic manufacturing company to Great White Hypes and Dana White being friends with Donald Trump. That's a correlation that we don't need to point out. Like, it is obviously there. Just like this double standard is obviously there.
You know, and it's funny too that you bring up Max Holloway, and you know, so the whole knock on Nico is that she wins this belt, and she just, you know, in their eyes refusing to, and when I say their eyes, I mean, you know, just the venomous fan base, and you know, Valentina Shevchenko and her management and whatnot. They're painting this picture like she just doesn't want to fight. She won this belt to just not fight, and she's been ducking this matchup, and she's been faking this and doing. The woman has been injured repeatedly. Apparently her body's been out of whack for her time in the Tough House, where they have to make weight all these times, and it's just not a very healthy process. She's been sick, and tonsillitis and all that. And I say all that to say all this has happened in maybe 10 months or something like that.
9
months since she won the belt. If I remember correctly, she won that belt on the same night that Max Holloway last fought.
Ooh. Max
Holloway has been booked 2 times, or 3 times actually, 2 or 3 times. The first time with Brian Ortega stepped in. You know, I don't even want to count the Khabib fight necessarily, but I believe wasn't he put on another card recently, and it just got canceled in the last minute? Yeah. So 3 times that Max Holloway has been booked since then, and he has not been able to make it to the scale. Yet all of our sympathy goes to him and not Nico Montoya. It doesn't make sense. Max Holloway still has that championship belt. I'm not saying he should be stripped. I don't think he should.
Yes.
I think we should be looking out for fighter health and safety first, and let a good amount of time pass before we start snatching away the accomplishments.
And also, you know, for those listening, you know, this isn't, when we bring up Max Holloway, it isn't for us to say, well, if you're shitting on Nico Montana, you should go shit on Max Holloway. No, you should have sympathy for fighters that are literally killing themselves to make weight to an arbitrary weight class that we decided decades ago, and then to fight and get brain damage for your enjoyment. Yeah, you should have sympathy for them.
Yeah.
And on top of that,
you know, and
sorry, you go.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, you first, man.
I forgot what I was gonna say. Anyways, it's okay. It's okay.
Oh, my fault, bro.
It's okay.
So I did just want to say this in particular about this whole scenario. The idea that Nico Montoya is afraid and she's ducking and this and that, and she never intended to fight. Now I get it from Valentina Shevchenko and her management's perspective. Shevchenko is a fighter, and a particularly tough one at that. Keep in mind, she was in a shootout with like a couple of weeks before she submitted what's her name, Juliana Pena.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about somebody who is tough on even the tough fighter scale. So I get from her perspective why it may look like that, because she doesn't think like the average person.
Or even as just like a PR. Even as just like a PR thing. Like I'm okay with fighters going that way. That's kind of their job to sort of like insinuate that. Like, I'm okay with that. It's the media's job to tell the fans, hey, there's not much legitimacy to that argument, but she's saying this.
Yeah, like I get that. Like it makes sense for the fighters to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are some clown who's got a beer gut and can't throw a jab to save his life, and you are behind your keyboard talking about she's scared and she's this and she's that, you need to go ahead and open your window. You need to jump out of it because you're a clown. Like,
I want smoke.
Like we don't need that sort of stupidity put out in this world. It doesn't make any sense. Like these people, they don't think like us. They don't feel fear the way we feel fear. You know, when one of these clowns is sitting in traffic and somebody honks the horn at them and they get scared and then, you know, they don't know what to do and they panic. Fighters live with that confrontation every day. They make a living off that confrontation. Like that's not your world, player. Stay out of it. Don't go bashing the character of these people who do perhaps the hardest thing you can do physically with yourself to make a living. It's not your lane, player. Stay out of it.
You know, and it's one thing if it's like a I think it's Oliver McCall versus Lennox Lewis, the rematch. Like Oliver McCall is literally
when he kind of freaked out.
Yeah,
and
like he's
had a
he's
psychotic
literally
episode,
crying.
essentially.
He's literally crying in the ring and having a panic attack. That's different than whatever Nico Montana's doing, because she has not shown one time of being worried or having a mental breakdown. Because fighters, that sometimes does happen. Like fighters sometimes do have like a mental breakdown and the anxiety gets to them. I will concede that point to some of the fans, but that's not the case here. That is clearly not the case here. And on top of that, I remember my point I was going to say and I forgot. This was the perfect time to implement an interim belt. You had a fighter being rushed to the hospital. You, as the UFC, told that fighter, hey, you should go to the hospital because you might be dying. And then for them to strip her of her belt instead of implementing an interim title when that's been the norm now makes zero sense. And I know they couldn't really find a replacement fighter for Valentina Shevchenko, but move her a card. Move her a week or two away. Put on the Conor McGregor card for an interim title against somebody. I don't care at that point. But this was clearly not the move to do, especially like within hours after her going to the hospital, that you just decide to do that arbitrarily. You don't let her know, which is another thing I forgot to mention. The fact that UFC still does this. The fact that
no, she received.
Yeah, the fact that UFC somehow decides to let their opponents or let their fighters know what's happened to them via Instagram. I hate that.
Yeah, that's disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting. The same energy it takes to type up a post and hit send, you can just press those same little buttons on your phone to call somebody and tell them what's going on. You know, and especially that they did this. First of all, like, you know, if you know, of course, there are going to be different sides to the story. And from Montoya's side, if she was rushed into this matchup, which does play very consistently to the report that Ariel Helwani got bashed for in the media for putting out that the UFC seemed to be getting mad with Nico and, you know, and trying to force her to fight again and all that stuff. I mean, this plays into their hands. If the UFC is pushing this fight along, they're pushing her to do it, and she's not ready, and she agrees to it under a certain amount of pressure, and then her body is shutting down, and you essentially didn't even let her really get out the hospital before all these decisions were made, and you didn't even bother telling her or her team. I don't see any good coming out of that situation for the people who are onlookers to this and think that's okay, you're an idiot, and then think that somebody who makes a living off of the functioning of their body would jeopardize that and jeopardize their title and everything they work hard for, so that they can show up to this event, they can make it all the way to fight week, do a training camp, and then decide, oh yeah, let me go ahead and let my kidneys start failing because I'm so scared to fight somebody. But even though I fight people for a living, you've got to be a special grain of stupid.
And on
to believe that.
And on top of all of that, fighters, Project Spearhead, contact Leslie Smith. This type of business behavior should not be the norm, and it is the norm. The way to deal with that is collective bargaining. So if you're a UFC fighter or just a fighter out there, understand your options. Like seriously, go out there and put yourself out there. You know, I put this out on Twitter that I think Tyron Woodley should contact Leslie Smith and Project Spearhead. It's time, man. It is really time for these fighters to come together. And if it's not now, I really doubt if it ever happens. The UFC has such a clear case of them being employees, them having a strong case to being unionized. And if it doesn't happen, man, it's just upsetting. It's really downright depressing.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's just so blatantly obvious. You know, of course, you can have lawyers come in with all the verbal gymnastics in the world to argue one thing or another, but I think to the common logical thinking man, you can see that there's something really not right going on. And then especially looking at Leslie Smith's rather unfriendly dismissal from the UFC when you look at the need for talent in that division and her place in it on the 2-fight win streak. I think she
90
just recently
seconds.
won a fight bonus as well. I think she won a fight of the night for her second or third fight or something before this one. Like she has done a lot of good work recently and highly ranked in the division, and you get rid of her. It doesn't make any sense. It's just too many things. And then the statements that we hear from Dana White in particular about things, it's just like this flippant attitude toward the
60 seconds.
legal procedures, the careers of these fighters, their health, their safety, their monetary gains. It's on every level. There's just a lot of things wrong, and it has to come to a head at some point. You've got the antitrust suit going on right now. Like, that has to come to a head at some point. Apparently, the word I've gotten is that the rumor is that the White House has, like, literally the White House has shut down Leslie Smith's petition through Project Spearhead for the employment status to be reviewed. That soon after the Trump and Dana White meeting, that this was and that this proposal
10
was
seconds.
shut down after they won. They won the proposal through like the proper channels and was supposed to go up for further review. That's apparently been deaded as a direct result of the Trump-White relationship. So there are too many things going on. There are too many spinning plates right now for one of them not to fall and break.
I agree, Anthony, and it's one of those things where if you're listening out there right now and you're just a fan, keep your eye out because a lot is changing. Like a lot of paradigms in combat sports in the last 5-10 years has already shifted, and it's continuing to shift. We're seeing a massive change in this sport, not only in MMA but just boxing overall, combat sports. Period. The unionization side of it is an interesting one. It's a one that I think should be deeply cared about and should be looked at by not only the media but the fans and also the fighters, obviously. Andrew Yang, who is a presidential candidate for the 2020 U.S. presidential elections, he's come out in really strong support of Leslie Smith and Project Spearhead. Like you said, there's too many spinning plates here for not one of them to fall. Something will break. The seam will break in this dam of the UFC's oligarchic nature, and I think we're going to see massive change very soon. I truly believe that.
Yeah, we're and like you said, pointed to earlier, we are in a very, very early stage in the UFC and mixed martial arts as we know it. So this is, a lot of this is, while we can point the finger at Dana White and WME or the Machida brothers or whoever is at the helm, we can point the finger at them for a lot of things. But it's not necessarily, at least my perspective, it's not necessarily to come down on them as individuals or them as an entity. But we are still, this sport is still developing. So there are things that just aren't going to be right at this exact moment that we need to be working toward getting them correct. And for sure that Major League Baseball, wasn't what it was in the early stages, but you have to work toward it. And then, we look back and now this is established, baseball players union, NFL union, NBA union, and, what have you, and a good revenue split between all the TV deals and all the sponsorships that the company receives and all that. These are things that need to be being worked toward. The problem I see is that there's an active movement from the powers that be to not just keep it from happening, but push it backwards. That's the more disturbing thing to me.
But that's going to happen, though. I mean, if you look at union movements, not only in sports but just overall, like in business, the people that are in control, the wealthy class, the class that is at the top, will always try to keep power in their hands. Look at the NBA union. That took about over 10 years to get recognized by the NBA. Like, it started at, I'm throwing out a year, let's say 67, right? It took till 1977 for the NBA to finally go, okay, we're finally going to recognize this union. Stuff like this takes time. I think, obviously, the pendulum is so much on our side in history that the UFC and other entities and other players involved will not be able to push back on it forever. And on top of that, like you said, we should not be blaming Dana or the Fertittas or WME. They are just people at the helm of a system that is flawed, a system that is built to abuse and take advantage of fighters, and the system needs to be changed. Because as long as the system is corrupt and the system is so controlled at the very top, nothing's going to really change. As long as we have the system, when Dana White's long gone and dead, it won't matter. It would be the same problems. There would be the same issues. If you look at, let's say, boxing, that's why no matter if it's Don King, the Mafia, Al Heyman, whatever it is, you have these same stories of fighters getting abused or fighters getting taken advantage of or whatever. That's going to happen because that system has never been fixed. The NBA, it was fixed. MLB, it was fixed. And I think in the UFC, it will one day get fixed as well. Just from talking to Lucas Middlebrook, it's just so far and away. And from my mind and from his perception, it's such a slam dunk from a legal perspective that it's only because that top 1% is in control that it's not being changed right now. And taking away that control, that monetary wealth from that top 1%, to use my very Marxist leaning, it's going to take time, but revolutions happen, and we're in the middle of a revolution. And people like Leslie Smith, Cajun Johnson, and others are leading it. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens when the guillotine gets launched. I can't wait.
Yes, we'll have a whole lot to talk about when that happens, for sure.
Well, Anthony, obviously, thank you for calling in, man, because you talked for like an hour, man, and Blog Talk is over. We can't take any more callers, man. But Anthony, thank you for your time. Let the people know, obviously, where you're at, what articles are coming up. I saw on your Instagram that you were just, commentating fights with Leslie Smith, of all people. Wink, wink.
Yes, I was.
I can see where the rumors came from that you're hearing. For the Tachi
I don't know which I don't know my sources. I'm a journalist.
Of course. For the Tachi Palace fights, how was that, man? Let the people know what's happening with you before we head out.
Oh yeah, man. Tachi Palace. It was an amateur fight. The Tachi Palace Fights Contenders 2. So I got to do play-by-play. Had an amazing time. It was my first attempt at doing commentary. So definitely eye-opening experience, and getting to realize a little more behind the scenes. Every little bit that I get of the fight world is just like I feel like a sponge, just trying to soak up as much as I can. I've coached before, so I've seen that side. I've obviously do the journalism work and doing radio and doing all these things that are around the fight world, and seeing it from the commentator's perspective was very, very interesting. Interviewing a lot of the amateur fighters who are on their way up, and getting their perspective on things and coming up with the stuff to talk about on the fly, make a mistake, and you just got to keep going. It was a really cool experience. I can't wait to commentate again. And as far as the articles I got coming up, I'm on duty for the Triple G Canelo fight, so I'm filing a post-fight column for that, and then my regular Good, Bad, and Ugly series, which it probably will be a hybrid between the Triple G Canelo fight and the Mark Hunt Alexei Oleinik main event as well. So look out for that. And I do have an op-ed that is due in about a day, and I have no idea what I'm going to write, but I'll figure it out, and that'll be coming out soon too.
Well, good luck with that, Anthony. Of course, man, thank you for calling in and giving us your time, man. It's always a fun time to talk to you. Obviously, calling again. See you later, man. Again, man, the studio is waiting for you to come, man. Like, come on. Anyways, that's been it, ladies and gentlemen. There was like other topics I might have like broken down here and there, but I feel like me and Anthony touched on everything I was going to talk about in the MMA world in a much more in-depth way. So again, hit the like button, share the show, subscribe. Patreon.com/Mixed Combat Radio to help support the channel in any financial way. But of course, it's free. Like, this is a free show. The only thing that's behind a paywall is our Sunday show. One show a week, but you get at least five shows a week, plus live fight chats and media reactions, all free and open to the public. Again, if you want free ways to help the show, like, share, subscribe, or leave a review on iTunes if you are listening via podcast, because obviously like 99% of you listen on podcasts from our metrics are listening via iTunes in their podcast feed. So again, leave that review. That is the best way to get exposure for this channel and this show via podcast realm. Obviously on YouTube, again, like, share, subscribe. Those are the easiest ways, all that YouTube shit. I am Matt, the Hipster Hunter. Hipsters here, haters beware. And I'll be back tomorrow to talk about more stuff in boxing, MMA, and the combat sports world. Peace.